we will have number 4 Ole Miss. They're going to be playing host this. Well, actually, no. Ole Miss is not playing host. I read my notes wrong. Number 4 Ole Miss is going to travel to Sanford Stadium, where we very recently saw the home winning streak go to an end. They're going to take on number 8 Georgia. Now, Georgia does have a loss already on the year. They lost to Alabama early in the year, so they already have a conference loss. So this might be, like, out of the back, this might be a game where, like, Georgia needs this win more desperately than Ole Miss does. Now, for Ole Miss, the elephant in the room for them is the Washington State game. What happened to them? Was that a byproduct of, we were just taking them lightly? That classic look-ahead spot, looking forward to Georgia as well as what they have going on for the rest of the season? Or is this more of a foreshadowing with bigger issues that are going on within the Ole Miss program going into the second half of the season, right? Because certainly you can just chalk it off as, we just took them a little bit more lightly than we should have, right? Because to be fair, they were a 32.5-point favorite, so it is very easy to go ahead and overlook them. But, you take a look at some of these other games that they've played, just in the confines of the SEC, I mean, it's been like a lot of one-score battles that Ole Miss has been involved in. Think about on the road against Kentucky, way early in the year. Kentucky, one of the worst teams in the SEC, they only beat them by a touchdown. Arkansas at home, they got into a shootout with Arkansas. Arkansas getting into shootouts with quite a few teams, actually, but they only beat them by 6 points. They did beat LSU by 5, and that's impressive. And now, in a non-conference game, they beat Washington State, but instead of beating them by 30, you only beat them by 3. So, is it leading to bigger issues down the line, particularly with the defensive side of the ball? Because, this defense has been inconsistent, I think, to say the least, if you take a look at the last 4 weeks. Now, the defense has been able to put together really good performances, held a really good Tulane team to just 10 points. They also held LSU to 19 in a day in which the offense wasn't fully clicking, but they find a way to win. So, I think they've shown that they're able to win in multiple ways, but at the same time, what kind of defense are we going to see from Ole Miss this upcoming weekend? Because Georgia on the opposite end, they've proven that they can win in a multitude of lanes. They've proven that they can win in shutouts. And I think the Tennessee game for Georgia was extremely valuable from an aspect where the Georgia-Tennessee script could be very similar to the Georgia-Ole Miss script. Because we know that Ole Miss can also put up a lot of points up on the board. They're very capable of doing that. The defense just seems a lot more proven. Just outside of the Tennessee game, I believe that there was only one other time. Yes, there is only one other time where an opposing team has put up more than 3 touchdowns. That is Alabama. They put up 24. But, even taking a look at comparing Georgia and them playing Kentucky versus Ole Miss playing Kentucky, yes, it was at home, but they dominated Kentucky. They won by 3 possessions there. They were able to lock up Auburn in the second half. So right out the gate, I look at Georgia, and I think Georgia has more paths to victory than Ole Miss. Now, with that being said, slowing down this Ole Miss offense, again, that had an off week, but still is a team that has some offensive firepower, and that is with an emerging star in Trinidad Chambliss, former D2 guy. And we thought people have forgotten about Austin Simmons. That is how impressive that Trinidad Chambliss has been, transferring in from Ferris State. But he's certainly not alone. Keelan Lacey, very impressive tailback, almost 600 yards on the ground, 8 touchdowns as well. Harrison Wallace III, dynamic receiver as well, over 350 yards receiving too. Well on his way to 700 to 800 yards on the year, pretty solid. They're top 10 in the nation in terms of passing yards per game. They're in the top 15 in terms of points scored as well, and they know how to run that football. So Ole Miss, we know that they can put points on the board, but at the same time, again, what it really goes back to is what defense are we going to see show up for Ole Miss? If it's a good Ole Miss defense, then I think then Georgia could be in some trouble, even in their home stadium. Because even though, Georgia obviously is extremely good at home, I think we've seen from the Alabama game that they can be exposed. But again, we've seen Georgia's ability to find a way to win in shootouts. Gunnar Stockton, he has really stepped up his game thus far this year. And being a relatively efficient guy, right? 1,264 yards, 6 touchdowns, only thrown 1 interception. So it's not eye-popping numbers by any means, but he's taking very good care of the football. He has taken a step forward ever since we saw him play in the college football playoff and in the back end of the SEC championship too. So, needless to say, this is going to be a game that I think is going to be decided by turnovers. Whoever executes better in the red zone. And how do things hold up in the trenches? Georgia's able to impose their will in the trenches against Ole Miss. Both sides of the ball, barbecue chicken for Georgia. If Ole Miss can hold its own, though, and they're able to find a way to buy time to utilize their speed and their vertical passing game, then on the opposite end for Ole Miss, maybe can cause some fits and really have Georgia in a fight for their lives. I think if Georgia obviously controls trenches and force Chambliss making mistakes, I mean, this is a guy that, has some playing experience at the D2 level, but playing the SEC is a lot different. So, all that said, we're going to pull up the model once again for the Ole Miss Georgia game. Interesting development here. So, as of when I'm recording this on Tuesday night, Georgia is a touchdown favorite. But the model thinks that Ole Miss should be getting a little bit more love here, right? That Ole Miss really should only be like a 4.5 point underdog. So, giving us a field goal in favor of Ole Miss from a spread perspective. I look at Georgia and I look at Ole Miss. And I think at the end of the day, I think what it barrels down to, not only do I like the fact that Georgia is home here, so I like the spot just because of that. But I think from what we've seen from the Washington State team game, I think Georgia's just a more well-coached team. I think they're a more focused team. Now that they've gotten some of the kinks out, had some concerns about Georgia earlier in the year when they weren't necessarily dominating against FCS competition. But it seems like Georgia, they're getting better every single week. And Kirby Smart, I think, he's done a great job coaching, not only this year, but last year too. They definitely should get some credit for that. So, I am going to lean towards the model in the spectrum of, because maybe that Washington State game was a fluke for a multitude of reasons. But eventually, all of those one-score games that Ole Miss has played in, eventually that's going to bite you in the butt. Eventually, a ball is going to bounce a different way than you want it to. So, I'm going to lean closer to the model. I am going to agree with the model from that aspect, and saying that it is going to be closer than a touchdown game. But still also agree in the model in the aspect that Georgia should win this game. It'll be a close game. It'll be a little bit of a higher scoring game, maybe. But I think Georgia finds a way to come out on top, win 31-27, and then they re-cement themselves as the top of the class in the SEC, getting this win against the Ole Miss Rebels. And they also get revenge for last year too, because I believe Ole Miss gave Georgia a loss last year. So I know they're going to be looking for their get back as well.